She sat with what he'd told her for a long time. The kitchen was very quiet. The lamp above the table threw a warm circle across the wood, catching the olives and the bread and the clean edge of the water glass and the precise, careful stillness of his hands flat on the table, waiting. She had photographed hands before. She had a series on hands, one of her better bodies of work, hands in labor and grief and prayer and ordinary kitchen tasks. And she noticed his the way she noticed everything, with the attention that preceded understanding. They were still. Not the stillness of ease, the stillness of a man who is holding himself very carefully because he has said the true thing and is now waiting to learn what the true thing costs. "Why?" she said. Not accusatory, just the question, clean and direct, the only one that mattered. He looked at her. "Because I wanted more time." The simplicity of it landed like a stone in still water. Not an excuse, not a rationalization, just the bare, undefended truth of it, offered without decoration, which was, she was coming to understand, the only way he ever offered anything. "More time," she repeated. "I knew you were going to leave," he said, when the 7 days ended. That was always the conclusion, the dissolution, the embassy, the plane. And when I learned there were 7 days rather than the immediate filing, He stopped. I held that information for 4 hours because I was trying to determine whether I had any right to it. Any right to the time, or any right to want it? The question arrived more precisely than she'd intended. He absorbed it without flinching. "Both," he said. She looked at him across the kitchen table. This man she had known for 12 days, this careful and contained and occasionally devastating man who had driven into a desert compound to retrieve her and negotiated her freedom with the pragmatism of a diplomat and shown her a plateau at sunrise and held her camera with the respect of someone who understood instruments and said, "I trust you," in a car outside palace gates and don't in a corridor, and you came back on a staircase, and who was now sitting in a kitchen at midnight telling her the true version of a 4-hour delay because he had decided she deserved the full truth, regardless of what it cost him. She thought, I have been in rooms with a great many people. I have photographed a great many faces. I know what it looks like when someone is performing, and I know what it looks like when they are not. This was not a performance. This was a man who had looked at the gap between what was right and what he wanted, and had chosen right, and was now, with considerable courage, telling her about the want. "Karim," she said, "you don't have to. I know I don't have to." She looked at him steadily. "I came back. I know. I came back from New York. I was at JFK for less than 2 hours. I showered and repacked and got back on a plane." She paused. "I told myself it was because of the photograph, the message, the 50,000. Was it?" "Partly." She held his gaze. "The photograph mattered. The threat is real, and I'm not going to pretend it isn't. But I would have come back without it." She said it plainly, the way she said true things, without softening or complication. "I would have found another reason. I was already looking for one before we landed." Something moved through his face, that slow tectonic shift she had cataloged from the beginning, the thing that happened underneath the composure when something arrived that he hadn't armored against. He looked at her with an expression she had no name for yet, but recognized the way you recognized a place you'd never been, but had somehow always been moving toward. "The dissolution papers were filed this morning," he said. His voice was very even. "Automatically. The 7 days ended while you were in transit." She blinked. "We're not married," he said. "As of 8:47 this morning. I have the confirmation." She sat with this. "How do you feel about that?" A long pause, the lamp above the table, the bread going stale at the edge of the board, the fountain somewhere outside doing its endless, indifferent work. "I feel," he said carefully, "that the mechanism is no longer the point." She laughed. Again, that unguarded laugh that arrived before she could manage it, the one she seemed only to produce in his company, which was information she was choosing to accept rather than analyze. He looked at her with the almost smile, the real one, the one that had been getting gradually less almost and more actual over 12 days of accumulated moments, and she thought, "There it is. There is the whole face. I've been waiting for it since the torchlight." "The mechanism is not the point," she repeated. "That might be the most you I've ever heard you sound." "I'll take that as a compliment." "It is one." She leaned her elbows on the table. Between them, bread, olives, the water glass, 12 days, a desert, a checkpoint, a plateau, a photograph that had changed a legal proceeding, and the 4 hours he had held information he had no right to, and had now, with considerable honesty, returned. "Can I ask you something?" "Yes." "The photograph on your study wall, the plateau at sunrise. Who took it?" He was quiet for a moment, surprised by the question, she thought, or by the fact that she had noticed and held it and brought it here. "My mother," he said, 20 years ago. She used to come with us when Tariq and I were young and my grandfather was still alive. She had a good eye." "Where is she now?" "She died when I was 19. He said it without drama, the way people said true things that had been carried long enough to lose their rawness without losing their weight. "She would have liked you," he added after a moment. "She had no patience for people who couldn't be direct. She said it was the only real discourtesy." Lara looked at him. She thought about the plateau and the photograph and a woman 20 years ago with a camera and a good eye and a son who had learned from her, somehow, that the only real discourtesy was not being direct. She felt the threat of it, across 20 years and a grief and a desert and 12 impossible days, and felt it pull, gently and without apology, in the direction of something she had been moving toward since the torchlight in the compound when he pulled down the keffiyeh and said, "Are you injured?" with the focused practicality of a man who came to help. "Karim," she said. "Lara," he said, at exactly the same moment. They both stopped. The kitchen held its breath. "You first," he said. "No," she said. "You." He looked at the table for a moment, then at her. His hands, which had been very still, moved. Not toward her, not yet, but differently. The stillness of holding became the stillness of decision. "I have spent 33 years," he said, "being precise about most things, careful about most things. I know what I am responsible for and what I am not, and I know the difference between what is mine to act on and what is not. I have not been precise about this. I have been, I think the word is slow. I don't want to be slow anymore." She said nothing. She was watching him the way she watched things she needed to understand before she could photograph them honestly, with complete, open attention, nothing held back. "I would like..." He stopped. Started again. "You said the last 12 days were real. I want you to know that is an understatement, from where I'm standing." He held her gaze with the particular steadiness of a man who has made a decision and is standing in it. "And I would like, if you are willing, to find out what real looks like with more than 12 days in it. The lamp above the table, the fountain outside, the bread and the olives and the worn kitchen wood and the whole quiet palace around them and the desert beyond it, and 12 days that had somehow become the most compressed and consequential of her adult life." "I'm willing," she said. He reached across the table then, not quickly, not dramatically, with the same unhurried precision he brought to everything, and covered her hand with his. That was all. Her hand on the table, his over it, warm and certain, the way he was certain about most things once he had decided to be. She turned her hand under his, and he looked at their hands, and then at her face, and she looked back at him, and the kitchen was very quiet, and the lamp was very warm, and the fountain was entirely indifferent, and she thought, "Frame this. This is the one. This is the photograph you don't take because taking it would mean looking away." So she didn't take it. She stayed in it instead. They talked for 3 more hours. Not about Nassim or Yasmin or the proceeding or the alliance or the trade agreement. All of that existed and would require dealing with, and they both knew it. But it was not, at 11 in the kitchen with bread going stale and hands on a table, the conversation that needed to happen. They talked about his mother and her father and Oxford and New York and the Syrian water series and the year he had spent after his mother died learning, badly, how to be the heir his father needed and himself at the same time. She talked about the assignment that had gone wrong in Mozambique and the 6 weeks she had spent afterwards not picking up a camera, which was the closest she had come to losing herself, and how it had been a specific slant of light through a train window in New Jersey, of all places, that had brought her back. He listened the way he always listened, with the completeness she had come to understand was simply how he was made, no part of his attention elsewhere. At 2 in the morning, she said she should sleep. He said she should. Neither of them moved for another 10 minutes. It was Nadia who finally ended it, appearing in the kitchen doorway in a robe, with the expression of a woman who has been awake long past her preference, and has decided that discretion has its limits. She looked at the table, at the bread, at the 2 of them, and said something in rapid Zafari that made Karim's expression do 3 distinct things in 2 seconds. "What did she say?" Lara asked. "She said," Karim said, with the careful voice of a man editing in real time, "that it is very late, and that the bread went stale an hour ago, and that she is going back to bed, and someone should turn out the kitchen lamp. She also said..." He stopped. "What?" "She said my mother would have taken her photograph." Lara looked at Nadia, who met her gaze with the composed dignity of a woman who has served this family for 20 years and knows exactly what she said. "Good night," Nadia said in English, and went back to bed. She was almost at her door when his voice came down the corridor behind her, quiet, carrying in the way that quiet voices carry in old stone buildings at 2 in the morning. "Lara?" She turned. He was at the far end of the corridor, still in the kitchen doorway, the lamp behind him. The distance between them was the whole length of the corridor, which was considerable, and the palace was very silent, and the desert beyond it was absolute. "The photograph Yasmin sent you," he said. "I've been thinking about who else knew your schedule. I told you 4 people. I was wrong. There was a 5th. Someone I trusted completely. Someone who had access to the car booking and the flight details and the security arrangements." The lamp behind him, his face in shadow, his voice very steady. "I think," he said, "that the leak isn't Yasmin. I think Yasmin is being fed information, and I think I know by whom." He looked at her across the length of the corridor. "I need you to trust me for the next 24 hours. Can you do that?" She stood in the dark corridor of the palace and looked at him and thought about all the ways he had already earned it. "Yes," she said. He nodded once. "Go to sleep," he said. "Tomorrow is going to be complicated." Next chapter. The 5th. The 5th person was someone she hadn't considered. When Karim said the name, the room went very quiet, because it was someone still inside the palace walls.